Hey all, welcome back. So let's talk a little bit more about aging and your body's circadian clock system. I think this is one of the most under-recognized areas that we can fine-tune with many different available modalities that we have access to, like feeding, fasting, window compression, exercise, nutrient timing. We're going to talk a lot about that. But I came across this fascinating paper, and I'm not going to share every little scientific nuance with you, but I want to hit on the big points that were conveyed to me in this 45-page long paper that I printed out. I have it right here. I will link below in the show notes where you can get access to this paper. And essentially, the sort of like 50,000 foot view of this paper is that as we age, our circadian rhythm gets altered, and that worsens aging. And much of these sort of phenotypes or the characteristics that are linked with aging, the gray hair, the wrinkles, the decline in function, muscle mass loss, sarcopenia, metabolic disease, you know that as you age, there's a higher prevalence of cardiometabolic disease, high blood pressure, insulin resistance, even sleeplessness and alterations in sleep-wake cycles, waking up at 2 a.m. to go pee, or waking up at 4 a.m. thinking it's ready to go, it's to start the day. A lot of women report this around menopause. Part of this could be the decreased amplitude and intensity of our body's circadian clock system. So we need to be very vigilant about our timing of when we go to bed and when we wake up, about when we time our meals, because food in general influences your body's peripheral circadian clock system, which has feedback to the central part of your circadian clock system that is more attuned to light and dark cycles. So we're going to talk a lot about that. The title of the paper here is Tuning Up an Aged Clock, Circadian Clock Regulation in Metabolism and Aging. So before we get into the nuts and bolts and the findings of this paper, I want to share with you this story of Jean-Louise Calment. She was a French woman that was the oldest woman in human history. She lived to be 122 years old and 164 days. Now, what does Jean-Louise Calment have to do with anything? Well, it turns out that she was very strict with her schedule of when she went to bed, when she woke up, when she ate breakfast, when she had lunch, when she went on the walk, when she went to the garden, all of this. She lived her life and optimized her body's circadian clock system. So this is anecdotal, but some of the medical records that supercentenarians and people that study supercentenarians, i.e. geroscientists, have sort of characterized her lifestyle and said, wow, her circadian clock system must have been on point. It must have been the rhythmicity and the sort of the velocity and the amplitude of the circadian rhythm must have been pretty good, because she lived a very strict lifestyle, and in terms of her meal timing, when she exercised and sleep. So I think that, to me, is the biggest takeaway of this 45-page paper that has hundreds of references, that dives into all the nuances about how your circadian clock system is intimately connected with your metabolism and the rate at which you age. So a lot of people are spending hundreds of dollars a month on NAD supplements and NMN and all these like little trinkets and tools, and I'm not saying they are totally ineffective. However, one of the best things that you could do is just take screens out of your bedroom and go to bed at the same time every single day. Because as you age, as we talked about, the intensity of your body's circadian clock system gets a little bit muted or attenuated. And so therefore, that is linked with all of the 9 or 7 or 9 hallmarks of aging. The epigenetic alterations, the nutrient sensing pathways, all of these things start to go awry when your circadian rhythms become altered. So instead of shelling out hundreds of dollars a month on supplements that theoretically impact the aging process, why not just say, I have a full stop. I go to bed at 9 p.m. or I go to bed at 9:30. Make no exceptions to that rule unless it's New Year's Eve or unless it's like your child's birthday or your anniversary. Besides that, you need to be very strict when you go to bed and when you wake up. Because if not, and if we just back up, when we see people who look like, well, they're a little bit older than they really are. They're 45, but they look like they're 50 or 60. What do we think? They look tired generally. I mean, that's part of it, is they look tired, they have gray hair, they have more wrinkles and all of that. Well, all of those processes, as we've been talking about, and as this paper goes into, are intimately connected to your body's circadian clock system, which leads me to the second tip that I want to share with you, and that is your feeding fasting windows, okay? So when you eat and when you break your fast are really, really important. We're going to talk about some of the nuances that this paper went into. But first, friends, I want to welcome you back. It's Mike Mutzel. As always, thank you for being here. I hope you're enjoying this content, and I really hope you enjoy some of the future tips we're going to talk about from this amazing paper all about circadian clock system and aging. So if you're enjoying this content, hit that like button. Please leave us a comment below or some feedback over in iTunes or Spotify if you listen to the podcast there. Also, I want to let you know we have a new electrolyte solution that is coming out. One of the things that can help you sleep better and not wake up to, get more water and all that is improving your body's hydration response, the healthy hydration response, featuring Redmond real salt. We also have calcium, potassium, magnesium in the most bioavailable form is bisglycinate chelate form. Also, we have creatine and taurine, which are unfortunately not included in a lot of electrolytes, although they are very important. This multi-ingredient combination electrolyte has been studied by scientists, but is one of the first to be delivered to individuals like you who want to improve your health. So if you want to save on one of the most, I think, novel electrolytes that features Redmond real salt, not that USP sodium imported from overseas, real ingredients that are made here in the United States, manufactured in the US, you want to check out myoscience.com and use the coupon code podcast to save on the electrolyte sticks. These are conveniently packed in a stick formation, which prevents them from getting moisture and oxygen and water and all that. You can bring it in your gym bag, you can bring it in your car, your suitcase if you're traveling and so forth. So again, you can use the coupon code podcast to save on the new electrolyte sticks. So let's continue on and talk about when you eat and when you dose, say, different nutrients. Like maybe you know that blood sugar is a problem for you. Maybe you crave more food, junk food, pizza, carbohydrates in the evening. Okay, so let's talk about meal timing, because it turns out that your circadian clock system is mostly responsible for improving your body's ability to adapt to the environment, to adapt to new seasons, to adapt to sleep-wake cycles, to adapt to the light versus darkness, all of that. And it turns out that your body is in real time adapting to when you eat and when you break your fast and when you start your fast, okay? So there's this meal anticipation. So it's important that you be more consistent with your meal timing for a few different reasons. Number one, your body has this so-called second meal effect and is anticipating food in real time. So if you normally eat at 2 and then you're not breaking your fast at 2, you might have a hypoglycemic incident because your body is anticipating the onset of food. And so this has been talked a lot about. There was a Dr. Woods at University of Washington who talked a lot about this. And so this can be part of, when people start fasting and they have these hypoglycemic events where they start really craving food, they have low blood sugar. Part of that could be that anticipatory effect. So you might just want to bring with you maybe some olives, maybe some nuts, maybe some salt, electrolytes, something like that to help in that situation. But the other thing, as we've talked about and mentioned, food influences your body's peripheral circadian clock system, as does exercise, as does the start of your fast. So please try to be a little bit more consistent when you start and stop your fast, as opposed to just focusing on the total hours fasted. This is where I think a lot of people make a mistake and they say, well, today I'm going to do a 20-hour fast. All right, well, it's more important that you start and stop, your feeding window at distinct time points during the day, as opposed to just fast for an arbitrary length of time. Okay, that's the message here because of this bidirectional feedback system. Now, the other thing that I think is really important from this very long paper that gets into some scientific jargon, but I think most of you would be able to read it and sort of assimilate some of the information, is that your metabolism and nutrient sensing enzymes and receptors and all of these things that are improved with exercise and with fasting, and I'm biased, but low carb diets, okay? All those nutrient sensing receptors and metabolism influence the circadian clock system. Okay, now why is this important? And what are the take homes from this? Well, we hear a lot of women as they go through menopause, they're overweight, they have hot flashes, they can't sleep. This is like very, very common. Well, the sleeplessness is not just solely related to, say, the transition in the hormones. There's also this metabolic component. Commonly in these women, a history of PCOS or insulin resistance, maybe a little bit of excess weight, right? So it turns out that sleeplessness is a function of circadian rhythm disruption, both directly and indirectly, meaning that an altered circadian rhythm is going to alter and cause individuals to wake up when they shouldn't be awoken, right? Part of the adrenal glands are releasing cortisol and this and that, right? Which is causing people to wake up sometimes. So improving your metabolic health can sort of shore up irregularities or imbalances in the circadian clock system, which can then improve sleep. And we know sleep improves metabolic health as well, right? One of the easiest ways to become insulin resistant is to just like have irregular sleep-wake cycles, is to stay up all night and eat pizza and watch video games and watch Netflix, right? Test your blood sugar after going out on New Year's Eve. It's going to be way up through the roof. And so this is why shift workers, this is why people who work the night shift often have higher prevalences of obesity, of diabetes, of high blood pressure, and even cancer. It's not just the circadian rhythm disruption associated with the shift-wake cycle changes, but it's also the metabolic derangement that's a consequence of that. So what we have here is we have two sides of the same coin. We have our metabolism that is inextricably linked with the circadian clock system. And so we need to start to think and reframe our nutrition and our exercise and be very consistent with our habits, because at the end of your life, the phenotypic expression that you express to the world, right? How vibrant do you look? What are your wrinkles like? How much hair do you don't have? The color of your hair, the function of your brain, it turns out is connected to the health of your body's circadian clock system. Okay, so one of my problems, just to make it personal here and just share with you a story, is, I do a lot of research at night, and I've made a habit and set a goal here. And it's been on my mind for years to change this, but I'm just off screens at 8 o'clock, like just done. If I haven't done it by then, there's no point in even doing it. Maybe, okay, if I pay a credit card bill or pay something, okay, it's fine, quick, but just done with artificial light, because I don't want to look back on my life and be like, wow, I have all this gray hair and all these wrinkles and I look like hell because I was on my phone. It just wasn't worth it. So I want you to sort of think about, okay, what is it that you do that is sort of not compatible with supporting your body's circadian rhythm health, because that influences how you age, my friends. It's so much easier to just get off your phone at night as opposed to shell hundreds of dollars a month for all these anti-aging supplements, my friends. And look, if the timing of those supplements are not right, I think this is another tip that we should consider is the chrononutrition, the timing of your supplements. For example, you should take blood sugar supportive supplements later in the day when your blood sugar regulation is sort of wonky. A lot of people have more insulin resistance and hyperglycemia later in the day. Okay, so that's when you should take something like berberine hydrochloride, or you should take green tea extract potentially, or biotin, or alpha lipoic acid, or bergamot, right? These are all things that can support blood sugar health, or even metformin, or rapamycin, right? So chrononutrition really matters. And let me just give you a small side story if you don't know this. In the field of oncology, chrononutrition and chronopharmacology, like when pharmaceuticals and oncologic drugs are being administered, really impact, like the time of the day. So what and I'm not here to, I'm not an oncologist, right? I'm sure you can interview one or go look this up and see what like MD Anderson Cancer Institute is doing. But they will do genetic analysis and sort of metabolomic analysis and look at people's chronotype to figure out, okay, well, when are these liver enzymes increasing? When is the immune system active? And they will then, from a chronopharmacological dosing schedule, time those drugs to match the chrono signature in the patient. This is how effective this is. As a small side story again, I think this could be with regards to the vaccine efficacy and breakthrough cases, I think there could have been a little bit more of a strategic layout in terms of like, hey, get the shots, if you're high risk or elderly, get it in the morning as opposed to later in the day where the immune system is more active. In fact, I'm not the only one to talk about this. I'm influenced by all the research that I'm reading on this topic. And it turns out that when you get, a pharmaceutical or a vaccination, it impacts the effectiveness of that. So we need to start to think about this. Now, why does this matter? Because we're trying to match our metabolism with our circadian clock system. And we need to start to think about and reframe this. So knowing that you're more insulin resistant later in the day, knowing that your body's circadian rhythm is so important to how you age, do you really want to be having pizza and drinking soda and having ice cream at 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night? Probably not, because you know that your metabolic machinery and your digestive tract, again, from a circadian rhythm influence, is not really active and not really primed to best metabolism and utilize those nutrients later in the day. No, you want to be having that probably for lunch, if you're going to have it at all. I would suggest not having pizza and ice cream and root beer floats, but if you want to have it at lunch, okay? So we need to sort of consider that. We need to consider our light exposure and light pollution. So I make a strong effort, in our house, we've gotten rid of all the compact fluorescent LEDs, the so-called smart light bulbs. And we have the good old-fashioned Edison light bulbs, okay? The incandescent light bulbs. I'm sure some environmentalists are going to freak out and say, oh, they're not as energy efficient. Look, we trade in other areas with regards to energy efficiency. We ride bikes instead of driving our cars. We do a lot of different things. But I suggest getting rid of these smart light bulbs, getting rid of the bright lights, not turning on the big screen TV right before bed, and being really mindful about your light exposure, because it turns out that light exposure totally shifts and alters the function of your circadian rhythm and alters that amplitude. Light exposure in the evening, it's not just the blue light. Scientific studies have found that it's other lights as well, and your iPhone. So when I do a triple tap right here using the accessible feature, do you see how I'll do it one more time? I'll turn it off. So there's the full on with no filters. And I will link in a video where Nick Pignot over at emfguy.com, he shared this. So if I do 1, 2, 3, so 1, 2, 3. All right, so it went away. So if you do need to be on your phone at night, at least use the filters. And there's several studies that I can link in the show notes here about using a phone with the filters and some of these sort of like night shift modes and things like that, compared to using the phones without that, and how it impacted the amplitude and the synchronicity of the circadian rhythm. And again, you're like, well, why do I care about my circadian clock system again? Because it naturally becomes more and more dysregulated as you age. And so if we can be more like that Jeanette Calment and have tighter circadian rhythms, maybe we could live longer without getting the adult onset associated diseases, the cancer, the diabetes, the memory loss, and all of that. So I think this is important. And I meet people all the time who don't have a pair of blue light filtering glasses. I think that's really a mistake, especially if you work on screens all day, and especially this time of year. And so I think this conversation is even more apropos, being that it's winter, at least here in North America and parts of Europe, that we should be more mindful about our light exposure because especially because the days are short. Being on your computer screen at 8 o'clock, if you live in Vermont in July, maybe not big of a deal because the sun is setting at that time, right? But if it's 8 o'clock in Maine or Vermont or Nova Scotia in January, well, the sun has set 4 or 5 hours ago. So that's where, again, there's this mismatch with the environment and your circadian clock because of the light exposure. And just kind of the last sort of tip here, but 2 more things to talk about. Kids, really important for kids, my friends. It turns out that children, due to the mechanical structure of their eye and the shape of their eye, they are way more sensitive to light exposure, especially at night. And they have as a percentage of their sort of body weight and all that, a much greater degree of melatonin suppression when they're exposed to light. So please be very mindful. I know a lot of parents now are buying their kids iPhones, and letting the kid have the iPad in the bed and all that. Bad news, right? Because number one, that's going to accelerate their aging process. It's going to alter their own metabolism. It's going to alter their leptin and adiponectin and insulin metabolism, cause them to crave more hyperpalatable junk food. Cause their behavior to be altered, their memory, their sleep quality, facial development, the whole thing. So kids are very susceptible to this. So we have blue light blocking glasses just near our couch. Periodically we'll watch a 1 hour special, a documentary or something like that. We wear our blue light blocking glasses, right? So you still need to be a human. You're going to be, maybe on TV periodically and so forth, but mitigate some of that. So you can't really turn the tint, to the best of my knowledge, on TVs yet. So that's why investing $100 in a pair of blue light filtering glasses. I really like the BLUblox. They're really great. I'll put a link below there. You can use the coupon code HH10 to save. So Andy does a great job over at BLUblox. So just to sort of cap this together and finish off on this paper, again, the title of the paper is Tuning Up an Aged Clock, Circadian Clock Regulation in Metabolism and Aging. A lot of the processes of aging and the maladaptive processes of aging are linked to circadian rhythm disruption and metabolic dysfunction. So as you age, you get more and more insulin resistant. So, maybe a ketogenic diet is not the thing that every 20-year-old should be doing, but it might be something that 65-year-olds, 50-year-olds may want to consider, because as you get older, your ability to process, bread and pasta and pizza and ice cream, it's not there anymore. Same with alcohol, right? Sam and I were just talking earlier, like as you get into your mid-30s, having alcohol, it doesn't metabolize the same. It alters your sleep more. You're more sensitive to the effects of that. And it turns out with carbohydrates, that's similar too. And those nutrient alterations because your circadian clock system is influenced by nutrient sensing receptors and metabolites and all of this, when you have metabolic dysregulation, right, i.e. from being sedentary, overweight, insulin resistant, that alters and monkeys with the circadian clock. So that's, I think, the big take home. Again, without getting into all the nuances of the histone deacetylase enzymes and all these sort of jargonistic terms in this paper, that's the big take home. And so we have control of this. And so we want to focus on when we exercise, try to be consistent with your exercise. That just creates a habit. If it's first thing in the morning or if it's after work or if it's middle of the day, just try to be consistent with that. You're going to prime your body and create a routine. If you're always, changing up when you exercise, and some exercise is better than nothing, but try to be consistent with that and try to be, sort of like the super centenarians, like this Jean Louis comment. I mean, she was very strict. I think she exercised at like 10 in the morning every day. That's it. And I'll just, this is anecdotal, but my wife, in mid-40s, she gets comments all the time that she looks like she's in her 30s, and she is so adamant about getting up to walk in the morning, going to bed at certain times, and sometimes that can be challenging with social structures and things like that. But I'm really starting to think that it's making a big impact on the trajectory of her aging process and not having the sleeplessness and the hot flashes and all these other things that many individuals her age are experiencing, friends. So I think there's really something to this. And I think this was the year of circadian rhythm and circadian biology, and we're going to hear more and more about this. And hopefully we'll have diagnostic technology that can figure out our chronotype and help us sort of do all that, but we don't have that at this point. So what I'll do is, first of all, thank you for listening all the way through, watching. If you enjoyed it, again, hit that like button. Let me know in the comments what you thought of this. And I would encourage you to check out this article. I will link it below, and just be more mindful about your light hygiene. When are you going to bed? When are you waking up? And sort of your circadian rhythm health, and feeding, fasting patterns, and try to be a little bit more biased towards time-restricted feeding as opposed to just garden variety intermittent fasting. The former focuses more on the hours that you start your fast, and the latter focuses on just the hours fasted. And I think the former is a better way to go about it. Again, TRF, time-restricted feeding. You can Google it. You can learn more about it. You can download the app Zero app. It's a fasting app that will help you, decide, okay, well, if I want to do TRF, what are the times I start and stop, and be a little bit more regular with that. It's good for digestion too. So friends, we'll catch you on a future episode down the road. As always, I appreciate you tuning in.